You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. This just came down just a couple hours ago. Headline in Miami Herald, State Supreme Court agrees with the Florida legislature. Felons must pay all costs to regain vote. Remember, we talked about Amendment 4, and this is just some breaking news here. So the Florida Supreme Court, they have sided with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and Republican lawmakers. They argued that in order to get the right to vote back, all court-ordered fees, fines, and restitution before registering to vote must be paid back. This is a setback to those, of course, who voted for Amendment 4. This is the ACLU. They had filed this lawsuit against the legislature. And this is what the court said, quote, "We conclude that the phrase, when read and understood in context, plainly refers to obligations and includes all, not some, LFOs, legal financial obligations, imposed in conjunction with an adjudication of guilt." And so, again, many believe this is going to undercut a lot of Amendment 4, which passed by 2/3 of the voters. But also keep in mind that in terms of the number of people that this impacted, it actually is a very small number in terms of the folks who have significant fines paid back. But it also goes to show you, Kelly, this is what happens when Republicans, they are scared to death of change. And they were scared to death of Amendment 4 and what would happen if upwards of 1.4 million people got the right to vote back.
This is absolutely heartbreaking. I, for the life of me, do not understand how that decision from the Florida Supreme Court is not a version of voter suppression. If the whole point is to rehabilitate prisoners, when they come out, they should have their citizenship back. It shouldn't have been taken away from them in the first place. But, you know, for all intents and purposes, they should have the right to vote back. They should have every right bestowed upon an American citizen back, and that includes the right to vote. You should not have to pay to vote. If it were somebody, you know, not in jail and you just said, hey, you got to pay all your legal fees, like it doesn't make any sense to me. Can you imagine if you had somebody on child support and they are, you know, owed in arrears, and you're saying, I have to pay everything back in order to vote in this local election or national election or statewide election? That doesn't make any sense to me, because your money shouldn't be tied to your citizenship. So, you know, Florida, get it together.
But, you know, it's not about...
But here's the thing, Greg. What's important here for us to understand is that the folks who actually got Amendment 4 on, it shows you the power of the ballot initiative and how regular, ordinary people can actually affect change. I would hope, Greg, that we see African Americans in other states use the power of the ballot initiative, use grassroots initiative to be able to enact such change.
Absolutely, and to use it again in Florida. I mean, you know, the election that was stolen by DeSantis from Andrew Gillum led to this in part because they are terrified, and they should be terrified, because we're getting ready to run over them like the mighty wave. The age of the white supremacists, the backs of the white supremacists, is about to be broken by demographics. And I respect them for their last-ditch effort to hold on to their tiny worldviews. But let's look at this in terms of debt. Mississippi, there's an article in the New York Times a few days ago that talked about the fact that they've got a similar kind of debt prison thing going on, an arrangement where they're locking people up who owe money to the state. And they're one of the few states that are doing that. But see, we have to understand that in this country, the concept of citizenship congeals around the concept of property. Property is at the center of the Western legal worldview, and particularly here in the United States. So when you look at the 13th Amendment, when it says slavery or involuntary servitude, except as punishment for a crime of which the person should have been duly convicted, what you've said is there are shades and dimensions of citizenship. Once you've fallen out of the legal universe and have diminished citizenship, meaning your property interest has transferred from being just a citizen to being property of the state, in other words, then you have to fight your way back into citizenship. Now, if this was somebody who wasn't convicted of a crime, this would be a poll tax. Exactly what Kelly said. You can't do that. That's illegal. You get a 15th Amendment argument there, or you can go through the Voting Rights Act subject to the 14th Amendment. But this is the 13th Amendment we're talking about, because now what you have is diminished citizens. They are returning citizens, and the state can technically do this. How do you break their back finally in doing this? You go back to the polls, you pass exactly the statute you want, and you flush that Klansman governor out and turn the legislature in Florida, which they know is coming. Please, Floridians, please, Mississippians, Alabamians, Tennesseans, and all over this country, run these white supremacists out with step one, going to the ballot box, and when they raise their heads to fight you, meet them everywhere, including the street, because you see now, these are your open enemies.
You know, the issue...
Julianne, real quick.
Yeah.
The issue is predatory capitalism. The issue is the extent to which you take extra value from black, brown, poor people because you can. And so when you look at some place like Florida, in terms of what's happening with people who have been essentially not exonerated, but essentially told they can vote, when you look at our prison industrial complex and the ways that people basically have their voting rights, working rights, other rights extracted, we don't talk about that enough. I mean, there are words that people, black and white people, won't use. We won't talk about capitalism.
Got it.
And we won't talk about predatory capitalism. Right. We won't talk about what socialism means. I ain't talking about Bernie because he's not a socialist. Bernie is a Bernieist. But what I want to talk about is the extent to which we have allowed, especially black people, black men and women, to be exploited because predatory capitalism allows that.
Got it. Well, folks, again, we certainly appreciate the work of Desmond Meade and Sheena Meade, and we'll keep you updated on exactly what happens with that in the future.
You want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. See that name right there? Roland Martin Unfiltered. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so when we go live, you'll know it.